One of his days, the protagonist woke up as usual. Barely opening his eyes, the guy could not believe that it was already morning. The protagonist's head was so crackling that he had no doubt that he had overdrunk. At some point he put his hand to his side and felt something soft. She approached the boy and asked Salt not to shout early in the morning. Salt was totally confused and didn't realize who she was, plus she knew his name. So they had to go back a couple of weeks. It all started at the Adventurers Guild where Salt was. An elegant effeminate guy apologized to Salt and said he would like to create his own personal harem. The soldier asked Takeru what this meant and Takeru introduced him to a girl named Leah. She was a Class S appraiser. Takeru stated that she was now a member of their party from today. The protagonist Salt, of course, was also an SS class appraiser and magic and swordsmanship more or less mastered. Also with the soldier was his partner monster named Shu S class. He was a small black cat. Takeru said that he was the strongest warrior summoned from another world and his pack didn't need any extra strength. The guy preferred to protect the pretty girls that surrounded him on all sides. And even if that was the case, the hero still didn't understand what use she was. Takeru looked pityingly at the soldier who probably didn't understand and decided that it didn't matter. The hero assumed that Takeru was going to take the rookie appraiser with him to a high-level dungeon. He wondered how she was going to evaluate the food there and what they would do about cooking. The girl blushed and grudgingly said that she had seen many different ingredients and recipes in the city restaurants. At the market, she evaluated and chose the ingredients that the adventurers brought from the dungeons and she got delicious dishes. Her job was to make people happy. The girl exclaimed that she wasn't a simple appraiser who spent time on magic and swordsmanship just to raise her grade. In that case, the Salt understood her. Their team consisted of an Ease-class warrior, a healer named Marika, and a mage named Aina. Marika asked the Aina if she was alright, but the girl said she hated the hero. They were all strong, of course, but the dungeons had unusual food and could easily kill ignorant adventurers. And so more than one party had gone down. It was necessary to sift out the dangerous foods, remove all the poisons and toxins, and then prepare a bearable meal. That was what the hero was doing. In addition, he estimated all of the party's loot, which was their main income. And it was hard for the soldier to believe that this girl could do his job in a high-level dungeon without any experience. Salt of course knew that Tucker liked women, but apparently he didn't realize how much. It wasn't hard to imagine how things would turn out for them. The hero had a premonition and simply thanked the group for everything, saying that he had enjoyed working with them. The girl smiled and was glad that they had finally managed to get rid of the extra load. Salt was once again convinced of how they thought of him. Even the guild had already heard a rumor that Takeru was charging exorbitant prices for his services. They called the hero an exorbitant burden, treating him like a cook. And as soon as he started learning magic and swordsmanship, they almost fell over laughing. Takeru had an extremely unpleasant look, and eventually he was traded for a girl from the nearest restaurant. All the people around began to actively discuss that Takeru had kicked the hero out of the party, but Salt did not want to endure such treatment from adventurers for the rest of his life. As he was leaving, he heard the girls tell Takeru that even the atmosphere was getting better without Salt. Salt felt the cat's tail beating on him, and the hero smiled, telling Shu that she was absolutely right. They would be better off without them, and the cat meowed in agreement. The hero had some savings, and if anything, he and the Shu could just ransack the low-level dungeon. Salt thought that it was certainly still a little early, but it was time to start his peaceful life. The hero approached the concierge of an upscale adventurer's inn, who was surprised that Salt was moving out. Salt was pleased to meet her, and he thought that this was his chance to retire, which meant that he would no longer be able to use this inn. The girl was a little disappointed when Salt said about retirement and decided to find out what he would do next. The hero would like to live the quiet life of a farmer, and the girl thought that for a valuer like him, it would suit him. The concierge stroked the Shu sadly, hoping she would meet her again. But the girl thought that everything should be fine. After all, she had heard that appraisers were now earning even more than healers. A company of Nantoks made up of appraisers had just arrived in town. They were hiring warriors to explore the dungeons. But in telling all this, the girl thought she was rushing things and the soldier smiled. The hero held out the payment to the Ali and asked her to take care. The girl waved goodbye and wished him the same. Upon reaching a bar in the slum, the protagonist greeted an old man that she was glad to see him. It was the owner of the bar, Garian, and part-time father of Salt, whom the hero had not seen for a long time. Garian poured the guy a drink and the guy told him his whole story. As he understood from the story, they found some girl and gave her the place of a soldier, and he, tucking his tail, returned here. The hero asked his father if in that case he could stay with him for a while on the top floor. Garian surmised that the hero wanted to find a new patty, but the soldier stated that he wanted to build his own house. He recalled that there was an abandoned farm not far from here and he was thinking of buying it and farming it. His father made sense of it all. Sighing heavily, the Garian agreed that it was not easy to work for a womanizing warrior. Salt remembered painfully how he had cooked for them, handled all the finances. He didn't understand why he was even wasting his time on them in such a case. Father and son clinked mugs and sent that warrior to hell. So the hero discarded the life of an adventurer and decided to start his new life with a shoe. The day flew by and the Salt fell asleep. The girl rubbed her eyes and said that it was too noisy here. At this time the hero could not take his frightened look away from her. Salt didn't realize who she was, besides, she was wearing his shirt. But to his surprise, it was the same Shu, an S-class monster and his partner. Shu lost her temper and slapped the guy for daring to forget his own partner's face. Together with Shu, the hero went down to the bar and asked his father if he knew about it. But to his surprise, the old man was aware of Shu. The father asked the soldier not to say that he didn't know it. After all, she was a S-class monster and it was natural that she could take the form of a human. The soldier admitted his guilt and asked him not to pour salt on his wound unnecessarily. But in that case, he didn't understand why she had been in the guise of a cat all this time. Salt thought that if she had shown that guise earlier, she would have been left in the patty. But Shu stated with a smile that she refused to work for an idiot who had muscles instead of brains. Besides, she believed that they would die from the first poisoned apple. With these words, Shu eagerly took a bite of the apple and chewed it. The old man gave his darlings some food and asked them to eat, saying that there was no poison in it. Salt, with his mouth full, told Shu that he would be buying a plot today and asked the girl if she would go with him. Shu was in agreement and the Garian ordered her not to speak with her mouth full. After looking at the soldier's papers as an S-class appraiser, the man apologized to the Garian. The guild informed them that the Salt was blacklisted, so they couldn't sell him land. The guy was shocked and decided to ask the question again, figuring he hadn't heard well. According to the man, he had refused to participate in the dungeon exploration some time ago, which had caused a lot of damage to the patty. The patty was completely shattered, and their leader Takaru was found in a half-dead state. The character asked to wait for a while and tried to explain the situation, but based on this guild report, they couldn't let the hero buy the land. In the end, they had to refuse the hero, and the soldier decided that there was no arguing with the guild. The guy didn't understand why everyone thought that he was the one who gave the backlash. The guild was full that day, and everyone had seen them kick him out themselves. But for Shu, it was simple. It was just that one of the guild administrators was friends with Takaru. The patty went to a high-level dungeon and took one rookie appraiser with them. It all seemed rather strange. Most likely, the dungeon application form stated that the party consisted of 5 people, including the Salt. The administrator could easily forge such a document, but the hero didn't understand why it was for a Takaru girl. Perhaps it was jealousy since there were many women around Takaru all the time. She decided to set them up and get rid of all the troublesome girls at once. Takaru was the strongest warrior and it was hard to argue with that. She could think that he was the one who could survive and just blame it on the soldier. The hero thought it was just outrageous and couldn't just let it go. Shu replied to him that even if the other adventurers knew it was a lie, they wouldn't stand up for a single appraiser. Besides, this administrator was a creepy woman. Female jealousy was indeed a dangerous thing. But the Salt realized that as long as he was blacklisted, no one would sell him a good lot. The guy sadly mentioned his peaceful life and Shu gave a sly smirk. She said everything would be an eye for an eye. When they got to the door of the house, Shu asked the soldier to make a serious face and then they went inside. In front of them was a table of books where a short old woman sat. She greeted the heroes, saying that it was not often to see a young lady here. Here they were selling and buying up land that no normal merchant would buy. The old woman told the soldier that they were selling dead land. By the way, she recognized the very appraiser who was the subject of so many rumors. Salt smirked, thinking about the fact that the rumors about him had already spread throughout the slums. The old woman said they were selling land to anyone who wanted it and asked what the lad was interested in. She surmised that the hero wanted to become a farmer, but with the hero's skills, he wanted to do more than that. There was a place east of here, not far from here at all. The old woman said they could get there by horse-drawn carriage. Salt scrutinized the map and the old woman thought they might know the area. The whole site there had turned into a swamp and there was only one name left of the cabin. The place was in need of major repairs and Salt thought that the conditions were worse than ever. He also didn't understand why the price was so unreasonable. While the soldier was thinking, Shu vigorously raised her hand and said that they were buying the land and the old lady had made a deal with her. Arriving at the plot, the heroes could not breathe easy. Plugging their noses, they were shocked at how the place stank. Shu thought she was about to faint. Salt made an assessment and made sure that there was no poison here and the horrible smell was from the marsh flowers. Shu surmised that these were the flowers from which the delicious pink fruit was picked. Swamp flowers, as was already known, grew in swamps. If you planted them in a field, the flower seeds would start to release moisture, gradually turning the place into a swamp. And the water was mixed with the local soil, causing silt to form. Surely the bottom of this swamp was full of seeds, and the heroes needed to get rid of them. As soon as the hero said this, Shu waved her hands and exclaimed that she would never do that. They certainly couldn't manage here alone, and the heroes needed a crowd. They decided they wouldn't touch anything today. When they got back to their father's bar, Salt and Shu looked at Gurion in surprise. He was glad the boys were back. Apparently his father had been drunk and told his son that he was the real celebrity and he was proud of him. Salt stared at the old man, not knowing what had come over him. The father was surprised that Salt had not heard anything about it until now and told him that a girl with his portrait had appeared outside the guild and was calling everyone to test. Shu and the soldier rounded their eyes in surprise, not realizing what was even going on. Appraiser Salt had been unfairly added to the blacklist and the guild was abusing its power. Guy decided that it was impossible to turn a blind eye to this lawlessness. Salt looked at his image, which didn't look like him in the slightest. Ironically, he still thought there was something similar and couldn't believe that there was an idiot whose sense of justice had been hurt by his story. In any case, this turmoil couldn't make the hero go to the guild because there were too many unpleasant faces there, for example, the administrators. The hero went to the table and asked the woman to accept his report. The girl defiantly as if she didn't notice him, and the Salt decided that she wasn't listening to him. She smiled and said she was busy filing her nails, assuming he needed something. Salt sullenly reminded her that he was an appraiser from the Patty Takaru and the girl knew it well. He gave her the report and said it was safe to assume that he had provided it. The girl indifferently said she couldn't wait for the next. One guy in the queue decided to ask the receptionist who it was and the girl ironically said it was the valuer. She thought they were no different from clerks and thought the guy would agree with her. After opening the doors, the hero decided that she was definitely the one he didn't want to see since she was the one who had been courting Takaru. Barely had he remembered her name when someone called out to him. It was a guild administrator named Zoe who asked the guy to stop hanging around and annoying. Seeing her, Shu also recalled the girl and squinted at her. An Ease-class warrior named Fiona approached them and asked the girl to stop slandering the guild. Zoe asked her not to slander her as she had seen everything with her own eyes. Fiona felt that Mr. Salt had been unfairly kicked out of the party and blacklisted. She felt that it was all their fault and they sent the party with the newbie appraiser to a high-level dungeon and an administrator like Zoe should have been sacked. Fiona yelled at the admin that she only looked down on the appraisers because they didn't fight on the front lines in dungeons and that they didn't choose to be appraisers. Looking at this picture, the guy thought that they should stop them before things went too far. Not knowing the girl's name, the guy approached them and asked them to stop this argument. Seeing the Salts, Fiona's eyes lit up. The guy explained that he wasn't working as an adventurer now and he wasn't going to cooperate with the guild as an appraiser in the future. Fiona was clearly upset and wanted to say something. Salt remembered that he hadn't given something back and handed the administrator his card that was still valid. In exchange for his adventurer card, the hero had the right to enter the dungeon for free. Even though he was blacklisted, he could explore the dungeons alone. The receptionist agreed and asked her to follow her inside to fill out the paperwork. Fiona was shocked and grabbed the hero's arm, not allowing him to go any further. Tears appeared in the girl's eyes and she said she wished she could join him. Eventually, the Salt just fell to the ground and Fiona asked him to finally say something to her. Looking at the cat, she wondered how she got a free pass to the dungeon. The girl warned that she was fainting and the hero asked her not to. This female warrior was following him everywhere, and it was good that they were able to elude her with magic. The guy put his head on the table and told Shu that she was his savior. Besides, they had a pass to the dungeon, so the hero thought that they wouldn't meet her again. His father looked out the window and saw a certain girl there. Deciding that she was the one who was following his son, he decided to ask the Salt about it. Fiona thought she would have to go round all the houses and was lucky to find them only on the 107th attempt. Fiona thought that the appraiser of the strongest patty was retiring and it was a waste of talent. In lieu of that, she asked to team up with her. The girl apologized and once again decided to introduce herself. Fiona was a TS-class adventurer warrior and she still had little experience. Salt decided to tell her that she was no longer an adventurer and thought that if you looked at her closely, she was a real beauty. Shu slapped the guy on the back of the head and told him he was a complete fool. Kat angrily approached Fiona Clamberbert and said that the Clamberbert family had succubus blood flowing in it and everyone knew it. In that case, it became incomprehensible to her why this girl needed a Salt. Fiona began to lose her temper and was covered in a dark aura, and Shu said that out of anger, she showed all her true nature of an inferior monster. But then the old man grabbed the pot and hit it with the ladle, ordering them to stop all this and not to fight in his bar. All three of them immediately fell silent and the hero didn't understand how she was a warrior who didn't know how to kill monsters. The girl clenched her hands and admitted that she was kicked out of all the patties because of that, but she thought that she could do it with the hero. Salt apologized and said that he had already decided to leave the adventurers and take up farming. Besides, Fiona could already notice him returning his card to the administrator. The girl sadly thought that in all likelihood, she really wasn't fit to be a warrior. The hero sympathized with her situation, but there was really nothing he could do to help her. After opening the doors, Fiona apologized for disturbing them and left. Shu decided that they had too many problems and asked Salt what they would do tomorrow. The guy already had a few ideas and Shu suggested that they rest for a while and talk about their ideas tomorrow. Salt lowered his head and thought about the fact that this girl's name was Fiona. Even before he met Takeru, he was a simple grade B appraiser. At that time, the Salt was a poor cook, inept at fighting, and he only had to carry the group's belongings. Among the adventurers, the appraisers were the main weak link and the boys demanded that he shut up and look for mushrooms for them. He was often reminded that he was useless and bound by the appraiser's vocation. He felt humiliation and despair. Salt recalled the words of Fiona, who thought of how she was really no good in the wars. He was familiar with those eyes and Fiona had felt the same despair that he had once felt. The hero surmised that it was time for him to rest. Salt smiled and told Shu that the carpenter would rebuild their hut and the slum children would clean up the swamp. Shu was surprised to see a bunch of people outside their ruined hut and asked how he had gathered them. The hero offered each one 300 pesco a day for labor, and for a slum child this was a large sum. Salt thought they should have managed all the work in a day. In that case, he suggested that Shu go with him to get good soil for the farm and the dungeon, to which the girl agreed. By the way, now the hero wasn't adventurous, so Zoe was no longer the administrator in charge of him. But Shu thought that it didn't matter, because they were all on the same page and the heroes headed to the Adventurers Guild. There they were met by a cute admin girl and told that she would be responsible for them from this day forward. The girl named Sharia hoped that they would work together and the guy reciprocated her. Shu told the hero in his ear that the new administrator was pretty good and the hero could agree with her. In that case, the girl suggested that they go to the magic circle. She hoped that their exploration would prove fruitful and the heroes looked at the administrator in surprise. The administrator didn't exactly know if veterans like them needed to be told to be careful. With a smile, the girl waved at the protagonists, after which the teleporter moved them to the dungeon. Shu and Salt got into the beginner's dungeon using the gate, and the hero asked the girl if she had heard her words. The hero flushed as the administrator wished them good luck and asked them to be careful. It was the first time in 10 years that he had been treated like that, and the girl agreed with him, saying that she was a very nice administrator. Still, she was supervising the beginner's dungeon and the Salt agreed with the Shu. The hero got a cage and Shu thought they would catch moles. Salt agreed and said that moles were perfect for cleaning dirty soil. Even their droppings were perfect compost and they could feed on leftovers. In farming they were simply indispensable and Shu decided in that case to start. An hour later, a fair number of moles landed in the protagonist's cage. Salt found the moles a little too cute and decided to give them names. The girl thought this was strange, for the moles were making cries of danger. Perhaps the adventurers nearby had stumbled upon their natural enemy. Shu wondered, and the Salt surmised that it was a giant snake whose venom was nasty, but the newcomers had to deal with it. The lad felt that there was no need to go to their aid. Guy took the cage in his hands and felt the moles shivering. He suggested that the girl hurry home, but Shu couldn't believe that they would just pick up and leave. Shu lowered her ears and thought that among those newcomers might be that woman who couldn't kill monsters. The hero recalled the words that Fiona had told him earlier. In any case, he only had a knife with him today to gather ingredients, but thinking of Fiona, the soldier decided to go to help. The group shouted to Fiona to kill the giant cobra snake, but the girl couldn't do it. With fear in her eyes, Fiona looked at the dungeon boss and didn't know what to do. The girl struggled to hold back the serpent's strike with her sword and the squad member didn't realize what she was doing. He shouted that they were her comrades and she had to not only protect them but also fight, for a warrior who could not fight would be killed. It was as if Fiona didn't hear the guy and was immersed in her own thoughts. She didn't want to kill monsters and she just couldn't do it. Rushing to help, the protagonist recognized Fiona's voice and decided to hurry. She was surprised to see a Salt here and the hero couldn't understand what she was doing here. The guy looked at the serpent and decided that he could still do this. After all, this is a monster for beginners. Salt looked at the rest of the squad and realized that things were bad. After all, the snake had poisoned them and people needed an antidote. Salt looked around, thinking there must be some way out. Not far away from him he spotted mushrooms and plucked one and threw it directly at the snake. The thing is that these mushrooms were soaked with the odor of kobolds, and for the giant snake it was a real treat. So they were able to divert the snake's attention and the guy thought he had bought it. Salt looked at the guy and made sure he was good to go, asking for help carrying the rest of the squad. Fiona fell to her knees and sank into her thoughts while the guys tried to help the others. The hero shouted to Fiona and said they were leaving. The girl thought that thanks to the soldier they had survived and this monster had not killed them, and yet her comrades were in danger. And it was all because of her. The squad members told Fiona that they didn't want a warrior who didn't care about his comrades. She refused to fight and people died because of it. The boys decided they should not have messed with her and never wanted to see her again. The hero motioned for Shu to leave but heard a guy call him over. He wanted to express his gratitude for saving them. He wanted to hand the hero some gold, but the guy refused. Glancing towards Fiona, He said that he was a former adventurer who happened to be in the neighborhood, so there was no need to thank him. Meanwhile, Fiona sat silently on the bench and thought. The hero approached her, saying that she was not cut out for the job of an adventurer, but the girl knew that without him. Fiona cried and blamed herself for the fact that it was because of her that her comrades had died. Besides, they were newcomers like her and said they were glad to receive such a handsome warrior. They were always kind to her, but she couldn't even move from her seat and decided it wasn't hers after all. The hero admitted that it wasn't his either, so he gave up adventurism. In that case, the soldier offered her to guard his farm, and the girl looked questioningly at the hero. Shu decided that would not do. She said that Fiona shouldn't have been so upset. After all, the succubi's nature was arranged in such a way that they were simply incapable of killing monsters. It would be like a human trying to kill a human, and there would be rejection here too. Shu tossed Fiona a cage of hard work, and the girl looked at the baby moles. Shu said they were their important mates, and smiled. She suggested that the new girl hurry home. Fiona looked at Shu in surprise, then put the cage on her head and hurried after the heroes. Fiona smelled the attractive odor of the market stalls and took a nice baked potato from there. The girl excitedly showed it to the hero and offered to eat it together. But the soldier was not hungry and offered to eat the potato alone. The girl thought that the brother appraiser was very generous and thought that he would give her another job. After a while, Shu woke up and smelled a delicious odor. She decided to ask the hero what it was and the Salt wished her a good morning. He asked the girl for her opinion about their new home and Shu said that the windows were on the sunny side and the bed was soft. She was happy, and the hero was pleased to hear that. The carpenter took very little but did the job well, plus the children did a great job cleaning up the swamp. The hero suggested that Shu go to the dungeon to get some seeds after they were done with breakfast, and the girl thought that sounded good. By the way, she wondered where their guard was. Salt found Fiona in the midst of the moles with which she was sweetly sleeping in her arms and woke her up. The girl jumped up from her seat and wished Mr. Salt a good morning. Salt did not understand why she was sleeping outside. Fiona took the mole in her arms and said that as the hero had previously requested, they got busy clearing the field for a vegetable garden. The moles scattered around the field and began to make compost, and while she watched these little guys, she fell asleep. The guy praised the Fiona for a great job and the girl said that the moles were very warm and being near them made her so sleepy. The hero said they were going back to the dungeon and asked the girl to take their luggage. Fiona didn't quite understand and the hero reminded her that she was their guard and it was part of her job. The girl decided to do it now, and the Salt wasn't sure it would be alright. The protagonists had reached the middle-level dungeon, and they needed to decide what seeds they would take. They needed the salt grass, for its buds stored salt. In addition, they would do well to find a carnivorous plant. Their fruit tasted like beef. Shu suggested to Salt to catch a real cow and so, they would have milk every morning and could make cheese or butter from it. The hero replied that this was impossible, for she needed pasture, which she did not have. Shu looked angrily at the lad and the Salt allowed that it might have been after a while. In that case, instead of a cow, the girl suggested a tree with 7 kinds of berries and the hero asked her where she had seen such a tree. He thought that such a thing was possible only by specially experimenting with seeds. But if Shu found such a thing, the hero was fine with taking it. Walking a little further into the dungeon, the protagonists heard the voice of the children that they were delighted with their find and considered it a real good fortune. Apparently their group did not have an appraiser, and the boys had been fishing with their bare hands. The guy asked the kids if they were really going to eat the fish, but the kids didn't understand what the big deal was. The kids assumed the guy was one of the hired appraisers and if he wanted, they could share with him. But that was not the case, and the hero decided to warn them that it was a blinding fish, and it blinded its victims, after which it ate them. He did not advise eating it at all. The girl did not understand what he meant, for it was a dungeon trout any way you looked at it. The other girl thought it was carp, and the chap thought it was salmon. The boy decided to ask the Salt how he knew it was a dangerous fish. The Salt explained to them that this was a mid-level dungeon and with their hands here, fish were not easy to catch. He offered to look into its mouth to see if it was a blinding fish and the children were horrified by what they saw. Shu lowered her gaze and thought that she should not have gone to them. The boy told the heroes that the blinding fish could be given to the guild's appraiser's bureau and get paid for it, and the soldier remarked that these children were quite farsighted. In that case, the heroes decided to continue their seed collection. Once Shu and the hero returned from the dungeon, the receptionist congratulated them on their return. Salt noticed that Sharia was all business and Shu said that they had collected a lot of seeds. Sharia smiled and congratulated them on their success. She also told the hero that Mr. Salt did not have to visit the assessor's office and decided that the guy had some business there. The hero wanted to turn the fish into them and Sharia offered to do the paperwork in that case. Suddenly someone called out to him, and turning round, the hero saw in front of him a stunted girl. Apparently, Shu recognized her and opened her mouth in surprise, but Salt didn't know who she was. The girl was shocked that the hero didn't remember her. The guy so sensed trouble coming and apologized and hinted that they were in a hurry. She wanted to introduce herself as her arm suddenly started to ache sharply and she yelped. Salt asked what she was in pain, and from the looks of it, she had injuries all over her body. The hero did not know what had happened to her and the girl said that she had just been discharged from the hospital. The girl was surprised that the hero did not remember her and said she was in a patty with a Takaru. Salt jabbed his fingers at her in horror and said she was the girl from the restaurant, but the girl shouted that she wasn't. Or rather, it was true, but not quite. She was a rookie appraiser named Lee and apologized for that time. Lowering her head, the girl thought about the fact that she should have heeded his warning. Salt looked pityingly at the girl and decided to find out what had happened there. Lee told how they had made rapid progress through the dungeon and she had picked the stupefying fruit. They had an effect like blinding fish, but this dungeon was a top-level dungeon and things got much more serious. At first, she was shocked to find such fruits. She also decided to memorize the place where they grew and the girl in their group thought it was just an apple. Lee agreed with her and said that if they were baked, they would be even sweeter and suitable for dessert. The girls went to the safe area of the dungeon and tasted the apples and were delighted with their taste. The girl said that everything was delicious and that the previous appraiser was nowhere near Lee. Lee looked at the girl in surprise, asking if she really thought so. Previously, the Salt had forever told them that the fruits from the dungeon were dangerous. It was true, but only the seeds were poisonous and Lee decided that if they were thrown away, everything would be fine. The group decided that this guy didn't use his head at all and were glad that Leah had joined them. After dinner they suddenly began to feel drowsy. Leah didn't realize what was happening and looked at the girl who had been crushed by the huge monster. Due to the mind blur effect, the healer Mariku was eaten by the monsters and she didn't even fight back. But Takaru did something even worse. Right in front of Leia he killed an Ainu mage and after that he came to his senses. Takaru started fighting off the other monsters and the girl miraculously survived. She thought that there was nothing wrong with being a newcomer as they would protect her. She was good at cooking and believed that she had seen almost everything that grew in the dungeons. But still Leah lacked knowledge and experience and almost the whole group died because of her. Lee knew she was asking too much, but she begged the protagonist to take her as his apprentice. Salt looked at the girl in shock and could not make such a decision. The guy strictly said that he did not take female students, and that was the end of the story. Lee asked in that case to take her to work, but the hero did not understand why he should do it because he did not want it. The girl insisted that she would be useful and begged the hero as much as she could. Grabbing his cloak, she tried to stop the soldier, who refused her request. Lee pleaded to the last, promising to do whatever he asked, and the soldier stopped. He looked at the girl and said that the sight of her brought up thoughts of being kicked out of the party and asked her to finally disappear. Lee lowered her gaze and the guy thought about what he had said unnecessarily and got a bit testy. But if you think about it that way, Lee was also a victim of Takaru. Normally, newcomers weren't taken into the top-level dungeon and because of Zoe's intrigue, she almost died. Earlier, Takaru-san had told her that he was glad to know that she had survived. But even so, Leah was sure that he hated her in his heart, and yet she wanted to continue working as an appraiser. She ruined her comrades out of inexperience and bowed her head to someone she had previously despised. It took a lot of courage. Meanwhile, the hero gave up everything and tucked his tail and left the adventurers. Yet they had already hired a guard, even though it was not part of his plans. And if there were only more and more people, a quiet life could not be counted on. Lee begged as hard as she could and said she wanted to be the world's best appraiser, agreeing to anything. Salt had to agree with her, for she was screaming madly and asked her to tone it down. Their plants needed special care and the guy decided she would help him with that. Lee's eyes lit up and she called the hero her boss, but the Salt asked her not to say that. The girl did her job and asked the hero if she was good at it. In the end, the girl turned out to be more intelligent than the hero expected. By the way, she wondered when Shu became a girl, and the hero replied that E-class monsters could take human form. Lowering her gaze, Leah said that she felt good and the guy decided to ask why she thought so. The girl confessed that she was stylish, but the hero did not quite understand her. Lee blushed and asked him to ignore it. Shu called out to Salt and said it was time to make dinner. They had meat on tonight's menu. Fiona saw the girl for the first time and asked Mr. Salt who was it. Sort of, she was his student and Fiona came to like her, unlike the embittered Shu. Fiona was pleased to meet her and introduced herself, saying that she worked here as a guard. She thought that apparently the girl had rare talents if Mr. Salt had taken her on as an apprentice. The girl introduced herself as Lee and Fiona offered to have dinner with her, but the girl declined as she was having dinner at home. Shu tried to call out to the girls, asking them to hurry up, but Fiona could not take her rapturous gaze off Leah. Fiona wished the girl a good job and asked Mr. Salt to hurry up as well. Lee gave the girl a surprised look and compared Fiona to a hurricane, to which the boy agreed. Leah was chagrined to notice that she didn't like Shu, but the hero replied that she basically didn't like many people. In addition, Fiona was half monster, and for that reason, Shu became attached to her. Lee was surprised that Fiona could turn out to be a monster. She had succubus blood flowing in her, and in that case, it was understandable to Leah why she was so adorable. The girl sadly lowered her head and said that she was fine in that case too. Lee asked the hero not to look at her with that look, but the Salt wouldn't have looked at her if she hadn't said such strange things. Eventually their dish was ready, and the guy held out a plate of sliced meat to Shu. With a sidelong glance, Fiona said that Mr. Salt had taken great care of Shu. Shu didn't understand what she meant and said there was nothing special about it, but the girl disagreed with her. Of course, Mr. Salt was kind to everyone, and thanks to him, she now worked up to her 7th sweat every day. It was fun for her, besides she was treated quite well. Hero asked her to stop, for he was beginning to feel guilty. And instead of chatting, the hero suggested that the girls sit down at the table and have dinner, wishing them a pleasant appetite. Shu turned into a cat again and lay on her back. She was content to stay nourished, besides the food was very tasty. While the cat was lying by the fireplace, she was called by a Salt. He would like to lie on her stomach, and the girl asked him to make a simpler face. She didn't mind, but she had never minded before. The hero thought that he hadn't done that while Shu was in the form of a human, but now she was a cat. While he was thinking about it, someone hit him on the head from behind. Fiona in her nightie grudgingly said that the men were rather unintelligent. Taking the cat in her arms, she motioned for Shu to come along with her. The boy gave them a look, not realizing how they had managed to get so close, and took a seat by the fireplace. He had previously planned to live alone with Shu, but suddenly they had a guard and an apprentice. He had always wondered what happens to someone who gets blacklisted, but it wasn't so bad for him. Until deep into the night, the guy was sitting by the fireplace when suddenly he heard some noise. He wondered what was going on. Fiona and Shu immediately went downstairs, asking if Mr. Salt needed help. Someone knocked loudly at the door and called out to Mr. Salt, saying that he needed a brother appraiser. Shu recognized the voice of the slum kid. He was one of the ones who had cleaned the swamp for them, and the hero didn't understand why he needed him so urgently. Upon opening the doors, the Salt saw a guy in front of him who had his little sister in his arms. The brother asked the soldier if he could save his sister. The child knew that the appraiser's brother was an adventurer from the class. He begged the lad to save his sister, who was apparently very ill. The girl was quite pale, and the whites of her eyes looked strange. It didn't look like food poisoning, so the hero decided to clarify what she had eaten today. The boy told how they had caught fish in the river, but he had also eaten. Earlier they had found a baked potato, but only Sakura had eaten it. The hero wondered if everyone here mostly ate baked potatoes, and someone might have poisoned them. Salt decided to find out where she found it and if anyone from the townspeople could have shared it with her. Also, she could have found it at the stalls. The boy replied that she had found it at the stalls and it seemed to be in one of the rubbish bins. The hero asked the Fiona to take the girl to the doctor, but the doctor needed money. The boy wasn't sure about it, but Fiona smiled and asked him to provide it for her. Salt suggested that the boy go with them, for the doctor would be more talkative if her sister was brought by a warrior. Besides, the hero needed to check the stalls and the boy decided to go with him. Salt could understand how he felt, but it would be better if he stayed close to his sister. He put his hand on the boy's shoulder and asked him to trust him. The boy looked at the lad hopefully, and Fiona warned that they were leaving. The hero asked to tell the doctor that she had probably poisoned herself with spider potatoes. Shu and Leah headed to the stalls where they were greeted by the vendors and offered to try their baked potatoes. The vendor was happy to pick the most delicious potatoes for such lovely ladies. The hero asked him to show his potatoes and the vendor didn't mind. Shu asked if he saw anything strange, but the Salt saw only fresh, sweet potatoes in front of him. The vegetable looked like an ordinary potato, and there seemed to be nothing unusual about it. The hero decided to find out where the seller got it. The seller replied that he bought it cheaply from an adventurer. He looked like a professional, so the man didn't think there could have been any problems with it. The hero called the man an idiot and said that there was a huge problem with this spider potato being poisonous. The man asked the guy to cut the nonsense, and the Salt suggested he try it himself. The poison could surely knock him off his feet in an instant, and the soldier suggested that they go with him to the guild. The protagonists went to the guild's head of supply, Mina Shubane, who led them to the meeting room. She said that all wholesale purchases from the guild went through the assessor's office, and the man apologized to her by taking off his hat. His excuse was that the price of potatoes was very attractive. The hero thanked the Sharia for reacting so quickly to their sudden message, but the girl felt that she was naturally supposed to help them since she was their handler. Shu only wished that all administrators had the same attitude towards their work as she did. Fiona ran up to them and apologized for the wait. The hero was shocked when he saw the whole box of spider potatoes she had decided to bring them. The girl was insanely happy that she was able to fulfill the task of the Salt, and the hero asked her to tone it down. Mina took the potato in her hands and verified that it was indeed the spider potato in question. The girl remembered that an acquaintance of hers had eaten it earlier, thinking it was a sweet potato, and had seen her experience the same symptoms. Spider potatoes only grew in certain areas of the top-level dungeon. Mina asked Sharia to bring her a list of those who visited that dungeon, and the girl asked what they would do with the girl that ate it. Fiona said that the doctor was already examining her and she was told that she should be discharged by the end of the day, and everyone was happy to hear that. Sharia held out a list to the mines and only 3 patty entered the dungeon that suited the requirements. Only Isaac's party returned with the loot, and the girls decided to find out who was supervising them. Shu and Salt weren't even surprised to find out that their former administrator Zoe was their mentor. Zoe was surprised at such a coincidence that she met the main characters here. Guy and Shu gloomily looked at the girl and asked how they were doing with Takaru, to which the girl replied that she didn't understand him at all. As it turned out, Takaru had left to find a better appraiser. Apparently, a near-death experience made him realize how important appraisers are. And even if it was, the hero didn't feel much like going back to it. The hero was approached by the head of the dungeon information department named Frin and thought that something had happened between Mr. Salt and Zoe, but the guy replied that there was nothing special about it. Lowering his head, he said that it was just a small misunderstanding. Zoe had set him up to protect her lover, but thanks to her he was able to find out about this potato, so he was even grateful to her. Guy grinned and looked at Zoe, who was blushing with anger. Frin asked to tell her about it later, but first she wanted to hear the explanation of the incident. Zoe explained that Isaac had found sweet potatoes and asked her to help sell them so they could make some money. As Frin realized, they went to the appraiser's dungeon and she didn't even try to stop them. The girl tried to justify herself by saying that their Maori mage knew a lot about plants and their main goal was to collect rainbow fish. They could handle it without the appraiser. Frin asked Mr. Salt if an amateur botanist would be able to tell the difference between a spider potato and an ordinary potato, but that naturally was not the case. The hero didn't think it was possible since it looked exactly like a sweet potato. By the way, he also found it interesting that the shopkeeper bought 1 box of potatoes, and if the patty found a field with these potatoes, they must have collected at least 5 such boxes, and in that case one wondered where the rest had gone. From the report, it appeared that all the rest of the spoils had been sent to the assessor's office, and among the items were sweet potatoes to the tune of 4 boxes. Zoe exclaimed that Isaac himself had asked her to help with this. They collected 5 boxes of potatoes and decided to sell just 1 box. Zoe thought that Isaac and his team were professional and Frin went out of their way. Zoe thought that if they took some they would be fine and she wished she could go home sooner. Frin walked up to the girl and slapped her hard. Tears welled up in the girl's eyes, but Frin didn't think Zoe realized what she had done. Shu was glad that Zoe had got what she deserved, for she had made Mr. Salt and Leah suffer. But Fiona was furious, deciding that it wasn't enough and that she needed to be beaten harder. While the girl was flailing her arms around, the hero only wished that Fiona would behave more calmly. In contrast, Lee was perfectly calm and the hero paid attention to her. He decided to make sure she was alright and Lee apologized for not telling them about Zoe's ruse. The hero recalled it and agreed that they should have told as soon as they met at the guild, and Leah was sorry. But for some reason she wasn't angry with her. Even if Zoe had set them up, it was Lee's own fault for sneaking into a pack of ace-rank adventurers. Today's story reminded her of how she had failed to recognize poisonous fruit, but she was confident that it would not happen again, and she would henceforth carefully memorize all of her mentor's lessons. Salt was surprised at how much fighting spirit she had in her and offered to get Zoe into trouble together. Fiona decided to check in on the protagonist and Fuda, asking how they were doing. Fiona decided that apparently her uncle was doing well. The shopkeeper named Borkin Bonds bowed and thanked Fiona for her help. There were 2 girls named Sakura and Fuda with the shopkeeper to help him. They assumed something was wrong, but the girl was only here on an errand. Sakura thanked Fiona for taking her to the doctor earlier and Fiona broke out into a smile. Sakura's brother said that they were about to bring her the baked potato that Sakura had made, but the girl decided to bring it herself. The merchant told Fiona that they had not met under the best of circumstances, but he was glad that he had been able to find such helpers. Mr. Salt had arranged with the guild to keep his shop open, and Borkin Bonds thought he was an amazing man. But earlier he had also helped Fiona and she could understand how he felt. The merchant realized that apparently this was not the first time he had done this. Lee was shocked that instead of getting off the blacklist, the hero decided to protect the baked potato merchant's shop. She didn't understand how that was possible, and the hero replied that Frin called his cash talk and they discussed what Zoe had done. Frin apologized that Zoe had caused them a lot of trouble and promised that she would be transferred to another department and the heroes would be advised accordingly. But it would be enough for Salt that Zoe had been exposed. The girl also promised to take the heroes out of the blacklist and decided to do everything in her power so that they could become adventurers again. But the hero said that it was not necessary. The blacklist didn't bother him and instead he asked to hear his request. Now they could sell that shopkeeper their products at a favorable price. As long as the heroes are blacklisted, no one will offer him a risky venture. Besides, the requests for appraisals would dwindle, but they still paid a little for them. But Leah still felt like the hero was missing a good opportunity. Having said that, the doors swung open and Fiona walked into the room. She brought the sweet potatoes that she got as a gift from Sakura and Fuda. Judging from her mood, Shu realized that they were doing great. The children were now working for the shopkeeper. Earlier, Fuda was desperately looking for work and the hero had conditioned the old man that he would help with the shopkeeper and he would hire the children. By the way, he had a sign hanging that the goods had been inspected by the appraiser S-Class Salt. And in spite of everything, he still decided to do it. But Salt decided to nail it down, because with this kind of publicity, he would be able to receive inquiries without the intermediary of the guild. The guy suggested to Lee to do it. It was necessary to remove seeds from one box of fruit, swamp flowers, and the girl said she could handle it. Fiona and Leah picked up a piece of paper and told Mr. Salt that it had just come from the guild. The hero couldn't understand what was the matter and decided that they were nothing but trouble and asked to throw the letter into the fireplace. In the letter, the guild thanked him for his help the other day and about the blinding fish obtained in the dungeon. There was something they wanted to talk to him about, and it was about a drug that had gained distribution. Sharia was saying hello to them, and Mine wrote sincerely that they would be waiting for them. It was also signed by the head of the supply manager's department. Shu and the boy frowned, for no sooner had they solved one problem than another came. Fiona suggested that they distract themselves and eat sweet potatoes. Fryn apologized for waiting, for she had a mountain of papers piling up. The hero decided to ask what drug she had written about in the letter. One drink has recently become popular among adventurers. Apparently, if they drank it, they could feel bliss after a few hours and sold it at an exorbitant price. And the Assessor's Bureau concluded that the drink used enchanted fish, and Fryn would like to consult the soul. It was true that the chap had brought them one of these fish the other day, but he surmised that they also had their own appraisers. They might have had people more experienced than him, and that was true, but the head of the appraisal office and his deputy were in the dungeon right now, and they were short on manpower. Fryn asked Mr. Salt to do her request, and for some reason the guy couldn't refuse her. Still, the hero decided to have a look at this drink, and Fryn asked Sharia to bring it. Placing the glass on the table, the girl asked the hero to be careful not to drink it. It was like swamp tin in color, and there was also a fruity aroma. The drink itself was not thick. The hero didn't think that fish charms were added here and decided to ask why they were so bothered by this drink. Fryn decided that it would be easier to show him around. The heroes proceeded to the guild dungeon behind Fryn, where they saw a strange guy behind bars. They found his appearance quite horrifying, and Fryn asked the heroes to step back a bit. As soon as the girl brought the drink to the grate, the guy seemed to become distraught and desperately reached for her hand. His reaction to the drink was so swift that Shu became frightened and clung to the soul. It had already become clear to them that the boyfriend of one of the victims they had discovered the other day. Not wanting to watch his tantrums any longer, Shu suggested they get out of here. The fellow's mates had earlier informed them of the seizure, and when they arrived he had already fallen into madness. The doctor concluded that the drug was the cause and the usually fascinating fish were causing hallucinations. Monsters looked like girls and mud became candy, but such symptoms the hero had never seen before. Salt thought that Fryn knew everything herself, for she was a professional pharmacist. That was the reason she had been assigned the case, although she thought it should have been handled by the security department. The characters so realized that Fryn had also been dragged into this against her will. The hero suggested that it was probably fungi parasitizing the fascinating fish. There were mushrooms parasitizing the enchanting fish with the same effect, and they could have extracted these mushrooms and added them to the drink. Guy was certain that only the enchanting mushrooms could cause such a strong addiction, and Fryn wondered. These mushrooms were addictive to their hosts, and if a fish ever tasted these mushrooms, even its eggs would become addicted to them. These symptoms were caused by fungal spores. The spores were weak against fire, so that if one were to roast a charmed fish and eat it, it would only cause hallucinations and no more. The hero surmised that there were people who did not develop an addiction after this drink, and Fryn agreed with him. Earlier, the two mates of that poor fellow in the dungeon had also drunk the drink, but nothing happened to them. Only felt more cheerful than usual. There were definitely mushrooms added to the drink, and the only difference was that those two got the drink without spores, but the third one was just unlucky. They probably just wanted to sell the drink to cheer themselves up, but for lack of knowledge they failed. Shu surmised that now there were mushrooms growing in that guy too, but the Salt replied that that was not the case. He had been able to look into his mouth earlier, but there was nothing there. The hero believed that mushrooms were incapable of parasitizing humans, but addiction could be caused. The guy's brain was damaged, and it was unlikely that he would be able to fully recover. Fryn agreed with the hero and said she understood. She concluded that someone had decided to profit from the adventurers by selling them this nasty stuff, and they were obliged to investigate as soon as possible. Shu became embarrassed, for apparently Frin was furious and the hero only agreed with her. In that case, the girl corrected her glasses and asked for Mr. Solt's help in the matter. Fiona was overwhelmed with emotion at being trusted to participate in an undercover investigation and asked to rely on her. All participants were given prepared costumes for disguise, which the hero had prepared and asked them to wear. A girl could be heard outside the door resenting the fact that it was her. Fiona was not thrilled that she had been given the most revealing dress that did not hide all her parts. And then the boy made a remark that her outfit was not particularly different from her warrior outfit, but the girl was still not satisfied. She wanted to swap outfits with Leia, but their sizes were very different and she refused. Little Leia tried to cheer up Fiona and lift her spirits. The boy also decided not to stand by and similarly cheered her up, reminding her that their plan depended on her and she had to act bossy. These words penetrated her soul and Fiona concentrated on the fact that everything depended on her. This gave her strength and the girl decided to become as bossy as she could. Lee was intimidated by such a push and tried to calm her down a little, saying that the hero was just joking. She decided to imagine the miniature and think of actions in different situations, such as what she would do if Mr. Salt carried their luggage too slowly, but except that Fiona got strongly into the role and defiantly replied that she would order the slow appraiser to carry her luggage briskly. The others were creeped out by this answer and Lee remarked that it was not at all plausible. The little girl advised to just look proud and leave all the talking to her, and Shu advised Fiona to just keep quiet. The whole team came to the red light district on a tip from the guild and found out that the drug was being sold in the neighborhood. Lee asked the hero why the undercover guild had sent them and not their own people, and the guy replied that they were suffering from understaffing. In that case, Lee suggested asking a warrior near them. The lad decided to make sure of her confidence, for there were 2 warriors there. Lee made it clear that everything was fine and it was necessary to quickly find the drug distribution point. Otherwise, Fiona could fall down right here from excitement. The girl showed her anxiety with her whole appearance, and the soldier regretted taking her on. Lee called out to the 2 guys and asked where they sold the drink that made you feel better. The 2 guys let it be known that they had no idea what she was talking about. Fiona and Salt began to worry that she would be exposed and Fiona determinedly headed towards her. She put her arm round one of the lads and putting her gorgeous form forward offered to tell her everything they knew. The guys were speechless and immediately agreed with her. On the girl's return, the hero asked Lee how everything had turned out, to which the answer was positive and it was undoubtedly the merit of Fiona. At first they were nervous when they noticed Fiona's excitement, but at the end the hero could praise her for her excellent work. Lee noticed that those guys were concentrating hard on Fiona's cleavage and quickly put everything out. Fiona started calling out to everyone and showing them the way to the bench. They entered a bar in the red light district and immediately asked about a special drink. The bartender remarked that if they meant the very one, it might be beyond their means. And then Fiona proudly declared that a young lady like her did not care about the price and the bartender immediately gave the maid orders to take them away. The bartender put everyone in a separate room and asked them to wait. Salt made the remark that the room was suspicious and it looked like they were trying to conduct business in secret, which he didn't count on. Fiona started to get nervous, but Lee calmed her down by telling her that she would take care of it. A voice was heard that greeted the heroes and apologized for the wait. An unfamiliar man approached Fiona and asked her what she wanted. Fiona was silent and the stranger assumed that the lady warrior had not spoken to the appraisers. In that case he decided to ask the others and Lee asked for portions for everyone. As they had already realized, the appraiser approached them. The man placed a large mug on the table for everyone and advised them to take their time. The appraiser waved his hand on which was a conspicuous ring and wished them a good holiday. The hero immediately recognized the scar on his neck, but could not see his facial features. He also noticed that the ring had a strange pattern, and he had never seen it before. Salt concluded that it was an appraiser from another country. Fiona was thirsty with excitement, but the boy reminded her that it must not be touched and there might be a drug in it for the color and smell match that shone in the guild. Salt thought it was a real jackpot and told the girls they had to catch that guy. Salt asked the guy to come over for a minute, and the appraiser thought there was something wrong with the drink. Barely had time to turn round before Salt twisted his arms. The lad could not understand what was the matter, but the hero, unlike other appraisers, was not a weakling. He advised the lad not to move, lest he get worse. The hero asked the Fiona to call the Mina here that was waiting for them at the entrance of the red light district. But suddenly the lights went out. In the darkness the whole group of heroes were confused and one of the guys in a Macintosh shouted that it was a fire. He pushed Leah aside and asked her to stay out of the way. The hero himself didn't realize how he got elbowed in the face and the man managed to escape. Salt couldn't stop him, and the man asked his fellow man to stay out of his way. Hearing his voice, the soldier realized that he had comrades. Later they reached the mine that was waiting for their explanation. Fiona said with pity that taking advantage of the panic the criminal had managed to escape. Mina hoped she had got it right. She looked at the battered comrades, and the hero apologized for that, for they themselves had been taken by surprise. Mina said that the fire had barely had time to break out, and they managed to put it out quickly. It followed that his partner had set the fire on purpose to save him, and Mina thought the same thing. The girl decided to ask if there was anything special about their fugitive. The next morning, Leah could barely wake the hero for breakfast, who was apparently very shattered. Shu was also too tired and wanted to sleep, but Leah exclaimed that they had already woken up later than usual today and it was time for Mr. Salt to get up. He had drunk a lot yesterday after being told off by Mina, so Shu knew that he couldn't be woken up that easily, but Leah couldn't accept it. Suddenly, the hero was right behind Leah, causing her to be very scared. He said he woke up to her screams. Fiona said that the morning's work was done and wished Mr. Salt a good morning, suggesting that he take a look at this. She handed the lad a piece of paper, which turned out to be a drug warning. The guild worked rather quickly and decided to put up notices like this all over the town. Mina asked him not to say a word to anyone that he was being sold by an imposter appraiser, but the hero didn't realize this, for they had lost him. It was quite humiliating for them and they were not weakly hurt by this assignment. But that wasn't all, and Leah with all her anger announced that yesterday someone had groped her. It happened at the moment when the hero reached out to the guy who was running away from them. In the midst of this commotion, he grabbed the first thing that came to hand and touched something soft. As soon as the soldier heard someone screaming, he pulled his hand away. Suddenly, he realized what it was and didn't know what to do. He should have apologized for it, even though it was an accident. Fiona was furious, saying it was a real horror and promised that if she found the culprit she would chop off his hands, and it didn't matter who it was. After her words, the boy realized that he valued his life more. Shu noticed that sweat was pouring off the hero and the soldier blamed it on last night's hangover. Shu realized and told Fiona that it was Salt who had done it and the girl lost her temper, telling the hero that he should be punished. Salt immediately apologized and said he didn't do it on purpose. In fact, any work from the guild ended up being lousy for him. The guy decided that he would never help them again and he now had his own life as a loner. He looked up and noticed Shu's gaze on him. She hoped he wouldn't take back what he said later, and the guy apologized. Lowering his head, the hero decided that he should have apologized to the Leah once more. Fiona kept standing her ground and saying that he should be punished. Lee blushed and lowered her gaze, admitting that she was glad it was Mr. Salt. Salt decided to ask Shu's opinions on what to say to Leah. The girl puffed up her cheeks, not knowing what to say back to him, and the hero asked her not to behave like that. Shu looked away, pretending she didn't know what he meant.